Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a story that many once believed could never happen. A crisis unfolding in slow motion, yet shaking the foundations of power, control, and global perception. Crimea, a land once promoted as a strategic victory and a symbol of strength, is now facing a devastating reality. Crimea is dying of thirst, and as millions struggle without water, Vladimir Putin faces something he has tried to avoid at all costs: global humiliation. For years, Crimea was presented as a prize, a jewel seized and secured, a territory that would prove Russia's dominance and resolve. But beneath the political slogans and military parades, an uncomfortable truth was quietly growing. Crimea has always depended on external water sources, and when those lifelines were cut or restricted, the peninsula began to dry out. What we are witnessing now is not a sudden disaster, but the inevitable result of political decisions colliding with environmental reality. Water is not just a resource, it is life. Without it, cities crumble, agriculture dies, industries halt, and people are forced to flee. In Crimea today, reservoirs are shrinking, wells are running dry, and taps in many areas no longer deliver what people need to survive. Officials attempt to downplay the severity, but the numbers tell a brutal story. Around 5 million people are directly affected. Families wake up each morning unsure if there will be enough water to cook, to wash, or even to drink. This crisis did not come without warning. Experts, engineers, and environmental scientists sounded alarms years ago. They explained that Crimea's natural water resources were never sufficient to support its population and agriculture at current levels. The peninsula relied heavily on external canals, and once those supplies were disrupted, the system began to collapse. Instead of addressing the root problem through cooperation or sustainable planning, authorities chose denial, temporary fixes, and propaganda. Desalination plants were promised, pipelines were announced, and grand infrastructure projects were showcased on television. But reality proved far more stubborn than rhetoric. Desalination is expensive, slow, and energy-intensive. Pipelines require stable sources that simply do not exist in sufficient quantity. Each proposed solution ran into technical, financial, or environmental barriers. Meanwhile, time kept passing, reservoirs kept shrinking, and people kept waiting. The human cost of this crisis is becoming impossible to hide. Farmers watch their fields turn to dust. Livestock die because there is no water to sustain them. Small businesses shut down because they cannot operate without reliable supply. Hospitals struggle to maintain hygiene standards. Schools face closures. What was once a region marketed as prosperous and secure is now facing conditions that resemble a humanitarian emergency. As the situation worsens, evacuations are no longer unthinkable. Authorities may avoid using the word, but when water distribution becomes rationed to extreme levels, people are effectively forced to leave. Already, residents with the means to do so are moving away, seeking stability elsewhere. Those who remain are often the most vulnerable: the elderly, the poor, and those with nowhere else to go. On the global stage, this crisis strikes at the heart of Russia's narrative. Crimea was supposed to be proof of strength, not weakness. Yet images of dry reservoirs, empty canals, and desperate residents contradict years of official messaging. International observers see not control, but mismanagement. Not victory, but consequences. The humiliation does not come from foreign criticism alone, but from the undeniable contrast between promises made and reality lived. This is why the term zero day is so powerful. It represents the moment when a system can no longer cope, when reserves are gone, and when there are no easy fixes left. In Crimea, that day is no longer a distant fear. It is rapidly approaching. 0 day means no water in storage, no buffer, no margin for error. It means decisions must be made under pressure, and every option carries heavy costs. For Vladimir Putin, this is not just an environmental or logistical problem. It is a political nightmare. Admitting failure undermines authority. Seeking cooperation exposes dependence. Ignoring the problem risks humanitarian disaster. Every path forward challenges the image of control that has been carefully constructed over decades. The water crisis also exposes a deeper truth about modern conflicts. Wars are no longer fought only with tanks and missiles. Infrastructure, resources, and environmental systems are now central battlegrounds. Control over water can determine the fate of entire regions. In Crimea, the absence of water is proving more destructive than any direct military action. Internationally, the situation fuels criticism and debate. Human rights organizations warn of potential humanitarian violations. Environmental groups highlight the long-term damage caused by overuse and mismanagement of limited resources. Political analysts point out that the crisis weakens Russia's strategic position and strengthens arguments against territorial expansion without sustainable planning. Inside Crimea, frustration grows. People who once believed in stability now face daily uncertainty. Trust erodes when basic needs cannot be met. Even the most loyal supporters begin to question leadership when survival itself is at stake. Water shortages have a way of cutting through ideology, revealing priorities and failures with brutal clarity. Attempts to control the narrative are becoming increasingly difficult. Social media, satellite imagery, and independent reporting make it harder to hide the scale of the problem. Photos of cracked earth, empty reservoirs, and long lines for water circulate far beyond Crimea's borders. Each image chips away at the carefully maintained image of strength. The economic consequences are equally severe. Tourism declines as visitors avoid a region facing shortages. Agriculture, once a key sector, collapses without irrigation. Investment dries up as risks increase. The cost of emergency measures drains state resources, creating a cycle of spending that offers little long-term relief. Some officials argue that new technologies or future projects will save Crimea. But technology cannot create water where there is none, at least not quickly or cheaply enough to meet immediate needs. Long-term solutions require cooperation, environmental respect, and honest planning, all of which are difficult under current political conditions. As 0 day approaches, the choices become starker. Rationing can only go so far. Emergency shipments are limited. Evacuation becomes not just a possibility, but a necessity. Moving millions of people is a logistical and political nightmare, one that would publicly acknowledge the failure to secure the region's most basic requirement for life. For the world watching, Crimea's thirst becomes a cautionary tale. It shows what happens when strategic ambition ignores environmental reality. It reminds us that control over land means little without the ability to sustain life on it. And it demonstrates that nature does not negotiate, no matter how powerful a leader may seem. The phrase, global humiliation, is not about mockery, it is about exposure of flawed assumptions, broken promises, and the limits of power. When a region runs out of water, the truth becomes undeniable. No speech, no media campaign, no display of force can refill empty reservoirs. As this crisis unfolds, one question looms large. What happens next? Will there be cooperation to address the root causes, or will denial continue until the situation becomes irreversible? Will the people of Crimea be protected, or will they pay the price for political decisions made far above their heads? One thing is certain. History will remember this moment not as a sudden disaster, but as a preventable tragedy. A tragedy shaped by choices, priorities, and the refusal to confront reality early enough. Crimea dying of thirst is more than a headline. It is a warning not just for one leader or one nation, but for the entire world. If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to stay with us as we continue to break down the stories shaping our world today. The situation in Crimea is evolving, and its consequences will reach far beyond the peninsula itself. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and thank you for watching.